There is a particular kind of woman who moves through the world carrying an invisible weight that others cannot see. She sits in groups of women and feels like a foreigner speaking a language no one else understands. She laughs at the right moments, nods appropriately, contributes to conversations, yet inside she experiences a profound disconnection, as if she is watching life through glass rather than living it directly. If you have ever felt this way, if you have spent years wondering why you cannot simply be like other women, why their concerns feel trivial while your questions run deeper than acceptable dinner party conversation, then what you are about to discover will change how you understand yourself forever. Carl Jung spent his life studying individuals who did not fit the conventional molds of their time. He recognized that certain people carry within their psyche a different organizing principle, a consciousness that operates by rules the collective has not yet learned to recognize or value. For women particularly, this difference often manifests as a sense of being perpetually out of step with feminine norms, unable to find genuine satisfaction in the pursuits that seem to fulfill other women naturally. This is not about superiority or judgment. This is about psychological reality. Some women are born with what Jung called an activated individuation process, a drive toward wholeness that begins expressing itself long before they have words to describe the restlessness it creates. These women cannot simply accept inherited definitions of femininity, cannot find meaning in pursuits that others embrace without question, cannot settle for surface-level connection when their souls hunger for authentic encounter. What you are about to explore will illuminate why you have always felt different, why your attempts to fit conventional feminine roles have left you exhausted and empty, and why your journey toward authenticity has often felt like a solitary path through unmarked territory. By the end, you will understand that your difference is not a problem to be solved, but a calling to be honored. The roots of feeling different from other women often trace back to early childhood experiences that activated your psychological development in ways that bypassed normal socialization patterns. Jung identified trauma not only as direct harm, but as any experience that forces premature psychological growth. Perhaps you were the child who took on adult responsibilities too early, who became the emotional caretaker for unstable parents, who learned to navigate complex family dynamics that required wisdom beyond your years. Or perhaps your difference emerged more subtly through a natural sensitivity that made you acutely aware of emotional undercurrents others missed. You were the girl who felt too much, who asked uncomfortable questions, who could not pretend everything was fine when it clearly was not. Your nervous system registered information that others managed to ignore, forcing you to develop coping mechanisms that set you apart from your peers. Jung understood that such early activation of psychological awareness creates what he termed the wounded healer archetype. You learned to understand human nature not through academic study, but through necessity, through the requirement to decode complex emotional realities for your own survival. This gave you insights into the human psyche that others your age had no need to develop, but it also created a gap between your inner world and the world of your contemporaries. As you moved through adolescence, this gap likely widened rather than closed. While other girls navigated typical teenage concerns, you found yourself grappling with existential questions that had no easy answers. You may have felt guilty for not finding joy in activities that excited your friends, for being unable to lose yourself in romantic fantasies or social dramas that seem to captivate everyone else. The feminine collective during these formative years often operates through shared interests, common experiences, and unspoken agreements about what matters. When your interests run deeper, when your experiences have forced accelerated growth, when your priorities align with different values, integration into typical feminine group dynamics becomes genuinely difficult. This is not a failure of social skills, but a natural consequence of psychological development that has proceeded along a different trajectory. Jung's concept of individuation describes the lifelong process of becoming who you actually are, rather than who you were conditioned to be. For most people, this process begins in earnest during midlife, often triggered by crisis or loss that forces them to question inherited assumptions about meaning and identity. But for some women, individuation begins much earlier, sometimes in childhood, creating a lifetime of feeling out of phase with cultural expectations. This early individuation manifests in multiple ways. You may have always been drawn to depth rather than breadth, preferring intense one-on-one connections over group socializing. You might have felt uncomfortable with typical feminine pursuits, not from judgment, but from genuine disinterest, unable to generate enthusiasm for shopping, gossip, or activities centered around appearance and social positioning. Your relationship with authority probably developed differently as well. While many women learn to navigate power structures through accommodation and people-pleasing, you may have displayed an early ability to see through superficial authority to the actual competence beneath. You respected knowledge and wisdom, but felt little automatic deference to position or status, a stance that often created conflict in environments that expected feminine compliance. The mother archetype in Jungian psychology represents not only the personal mother, but the collective feminine principle that nurtures, protects, and maintains social cohesion. For women undergoing early individuation, the relationship with this archetype becomes complex. You may have felt pressure to embody traditional nurturing roles while simultaneously feeling called to something more expansive and less defined. This creates an internal conflict between the parts of you that want to belong, to fit in, to be accepted by other women, and the parts that refuse to betray your authentic nature for social comfort. You find yourself caught between honoring your true self and desperately wanting the easy camaraderie that seems to come naturally to women who share common ground about what matters in life. Jung identified this tension as essential to psychological growth. The conflict between collective expectations and individual authenticity forces consciousness to develop. You cannot simply accept inherited roles because they do not fit your inner configuration. You cannot adopt beliefs that feel hollow because your psyche rejects what does not align with your deeper truth. This rejection is not rebellion for its own sake, but the natural response of a psyche that knows itself too well to accept artificial limitations. The loneliness that accompanies this process is often profound. You may have spent years trying to find your tribe, seeking women who share your interests, your depth, your way of approaching life. Sometimes you discover temporary connections, relationships that feel promising until you realize that even among alternative communities, your particular combination of traits and perspectives remains uncommon. This loneliness serves a purpose in Jung's framework. It forces you to develop internal resources, rather than depending entirely on external validation for your sense of worth and identity. While painful, the inability to find easy belonging pushes you toward a relationship with your own inner authority, toward trusting your perceptions and values, even when they are not reflected back by the collective. The shadow work that inevitably accompanies this journey involves facing the parts of yourself that you have rejected in attempts to fit in. Perhaps you suppressed your intensity to appear more approachable, dulled your insights to avoid making others uncomfortable, or performed enthusiasm for things that left you cold. Jung taught that these rejected aspects do not disappear but remain in the unconscious, creating internal conflict until they are reclaimed and integrated. For women who feel different, shadow integration often involves reclaiming power that was deemed unfeminine, intelligence that was seen as threatening, or emotional depth that was labeled as too much. You may need to recover your right to take up space, to speak uncomfortable truths, to prioritize your own development over others' comfort. This reclamation can feel selfish if you have been conditioned to believe that feminine virtue requires constant self-sacrifice. Jung understood that true feminine power emerges not from conformity to collective expectations, but from the integration of all aspects of the psyche, including those that society prefers women to disown. The woman who has reclaimed her shadow becomes less predictable, less controllable, more authentic. She stops apologizing for her complexity and starts honoring it as the source of her strength. This integration process often involves a period of profound disillusionment with traditional feminine roles in communities. You may find yourself unable to participate in conversations that feel superficial, unable to generate interest in activities that seem to satisfy other women, unable to maintain relationships that require you to consistently diminish yourself for others' comfort. This disillusionment, while painful, serves the individuation process by forcing you to discover what actually has meaning for you rather than what you think should have meaning. You learn to distinguish between your authentic values and values you adopted to gain acceptance. You develop the courage to disappoint others rather than disappoint yourself. The spiritual dimension of feeling different from other women often emerges during this phase of development. Jung recognized that individuation is essentially a spiritual process, one that connects you with what he called the self, the deeper organizing principle that exists beyond ego concerns. For women, this connection often manifests as a relationship with the divine feminine that exists within their own psyche rather than only in external forms. This internal divine feminine differs significantly from cultural representations of feminine spirituality. She is not necessarily gentle or nurturing in conventional ways. She may be fierce, uncompromising, wildly creative, or devastatingly honest. She refuses to be contained by narrow definitions of what feminine divinity should look like, expressing herself according to your unique psychological configuration rather than inherited templates. Your relationship with this inner divine feminine becomes the source of meaning that external communities could not provide. She validates your perceptions when others question them, supports your growth when others prefer you to remain static, celebrates your authenticity when others find it threatening. This relationship transforms your experience of aloneness from isolation into sovereign solitude. Jung taught that the goal of individuation is not to become independent of all relationships, but to become capable of authentic relationship from a place of wholeness rather than need. As you integrate your shadow and develop your connection with inner authority, your capacity for genuine intimacy actually increases. You can meet others without requiring them to fill your internal voids or validate your worth. This evolution changes how you relate to other women entirely. Instead of desperately seeking acceptance from those who cannot understand you, you begin to appreciate the women you meet for who they are, without expecting them to be who you need them to be. You can enjoy surface-level interactions without feeling betrayed by their limitations. You can offer genuine care without requiring reciprocal depth. Paradoxically, this release of expectation often attracts the deeper connections you always sought. Women who are also engaged in their own individuation process recognize something familiar in your energy and are drawn to the authenticity you embody. But these connections emerge naturally from mutual recognition rather than desperate searching, making them more satisfying and sustainable. The professional dimension of your difference often becomes apparent during this integration phase. You may discover that your career path looks different from other women's trajectories, that your approach to work prioritizes meaning over security, growth over comfort, authenticity over advancement. Traditional feminine career advice may feel irrelevant to your actual situation, creating another area where you must trust your own guidance rather than following conventional wisdom. Jung believed that individuals who complete significant portions of their individuation process become culture creators rather than culture consumers. They contribute something unique to the collective, offering perspectives and gifts that emerge from their particular journey toward wholeness. For women, this often means pioneering new expressions of femininity that expand possibilities for future generations. Your difference, which may have felt like a burden throughout your earlier development, reveals itself during this phase as your greatest asset. The very qualities that made you feel isolated from other women become the source of your unique contribution to the world. Your intensity becomes passionate engagement with meaningful work. Your sensitivity becomes refined intuition that guides important decisions. Your inability to accept superficial answers becomes the drive toward truth that serves others' growth. The maternal dimension of your evolution deserves particular attention, whether or not you have biological children. Jung recognized that the mother archetype operates within every woman's psyche, expressing itself through the urge to nurture, protect, and foster growth. For women who feel different, this archetypal energy often manifests in non-traditional ways. You may find yourself mothering ideas rather than people, nurturing creative projects or social movements rather than focusing exclusively on family. You might express maternal care through mentoring other women who are navigating their own individuation process, offering the understanding and validation you wished you had received during your own journey. This alternative expression of maternal energy can create guilt if you measure yourself against conventional standards of feminine fulfillment. Society often suggests that women who do not prioritize traditional maternal roles are somehow incomplete or selfish. Jung's psychology offers a different perspective, recognizing that archetypal energies express themselves uniquely in each individual according to their psychological structure and life purpose. Your form of mothering may be exactly what the world needs, even if it does not conform to familiar patterns. The woman who mothers consciousness itself, who nurtures authentic self-expression in others, who protects truth from societal pressure to conform, serves the collective in ways that are no less valuable than traditional caregiving. As your individuation process matures, you develop what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold paradox without needing to resolve it into comfortable categories. You can appreciate both your difference from other women and your fundamental connection to the universal feminine experience. You can honor your unique path while respecting others' different journeys. You can be alone without being lonely, different without being superior. This transcendent capacity allows you to move through the world with a particular kind of grace. You no longer need to prove your worth or defend your choices to those who cannot understand them. You can be present with people where they are without feeling compelled to bring them where you are. You can offer your gifts without attachment to how they are received. The integration of your difference ultimately reveals it as a form of service. Every woman who completes significant portions of her individuation process makes it easier for other women to honor their own authentic nature. Your willingness to be different, to walk an uncommon path, to prioritize inner truth over external approval creates space for others to do the same. Jung understood consciousness as collective as well as individual. Every person who becomes more fully themselves contributes to the overall evolution of human awareness. Your journey from feeling different and isolated to feeling different and whole serves not only your own development but the development of feminine consciousness itself. The courage required to remain true to your nature when that nature does not conform to collective expectations is enormous. It demands that you trust your inner guidance more than social feedback, that you value your own approval more highly than others' acceptance, that you choose growth over comfort repeatedly throughout your life. This courage develops gradually through practice. Each time you honor your authentic response rather than performing what seems expected, you strengthen your connection to inner authority. Each time you choose meaningful solitude over superficial company, you deepen your relationship with yourself. Each time you speak your truth despite potential social consequences, you demonstrate faith in your own perceptions. The woman who has learned to honor her difference while maintaining heart connection becomes a powerful force for consciousness in the world. She embodies the possibility of being fully authentic while remaining genuinely loving. She demonstrates that individuation does not require hardening against others, but rather developing sufficient inner strength to remain soft while staying true. If you recognize yourself in this exploration, if these words illuminate experiences you have carried alone for too long, understand that your journey toward wholeness serves purposes beyond your personal development. Every step you take toward authentic self-expression gives other women permission to do the same. Every boundary you maintain in service of your truth teaches others that their truth also deserves protection. Your difference is not accident or misfortune, but design. The very qualities that have made you feel like an outsider among women are preparation for a kind of leadership that the feminine collective desperately needs. Women who have learned to think independently, feel deeply, and trust their own perceptions become guides for others, ready to claim their own authenticity. The path of individuation is not comfortable, but it is the path toward genuine fulfillment. It requires that you stop trying to be who others need you to be and start becoming who you actually are. It demands that you release the fantasy of finding easy belonging in favor of creating authentic relationship with yourself and those capable of meeting you in truth. You are different from other women because you were meant to be. That difference is not obstacle but invitation, not burden but gift, not isolation but preparation for a form of connection that transcends superficial commonality to touch something universal and profound. Your willingness to honor that difference despite its challenges is both act of self-love and service to the evolution of consciousness itself. Trust the process, trust your perceptions, trust your path, even when it leads through unmarked territory that others fear to explore. You are not lost, you are not broken, you are not too much or too little or any of the other judgments that may have been placed upon your difference. You are exactly as you need to be for the journey you came here to take. The world needs women who refuse to betray themselves for the comfort of others, who choose depth over ease, who honor truth over popularity. Your difference is your strength. Your journey is your gift. Your authenticity is your contribution to a world still learning the courage such living requires.